Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 25 of the AfriCAN podcast. We've had quite good feedback from you on the two podcasts we have had on with an agricultural bias. And today I'd like to introduce you to my good friend David Maina, MD and founder of Performeter. And Performeter is a one-stop shop for everything dairy. And David, welcome to the AfriCAN podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, as you said, my name is David Maina, and I make a living through advisory and consultancy in livestock. And Leonard, you mentioned dairy, but we are also doing beef. So basically focusing
Excellent.
on large ruminants, livestock, and also putting a lot of effort on what they feed on. So basically livestock feed and fodder. So people who interact with Perfometer a lot will be mentioning words like dairy, beef, feed, and fodder. That's basically what we're doing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. David, once again, welcome to the AfriCAN podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So,
for
David,
inviting me.
I met you a couple of years ago, but when I was reading up on Performeter, I see you've been around as an entity for 13 years.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. Since 2013.
So maybe you can just walk us through the early days of Performeter to open us out.
Yes.
What is your background and what brings you into dairy, beef, and fodder advisory, where we've ended up today?
Yeah, before we met, Leonard, and before I founded Performeter, I worked for the for International Development Agency for the Dutch.
Yes.
You probably know SNV Netherlands.
Yes, we do.
In Kenya. And that's when really I began my work in livestock. Previously, general agriculture. My training is largely in economics at undergraduate, then international business development at master's level, and later on, master of agribusiness at Strathmore, where I'm also adjunct faculty.
Yes.
So they call me to teach certain areas when they are doing agricultural programs.
Yes.
So really, you can see that my life after school has been agriculture, but coming from a business background.
Yes.
So I do not approach agriculture initially as a technical person, like a vet or an agronomist.
Yes.
But we're looking at the economic angle of agriculture, how to make the money. So if you see me walking on a fodder field, I may not be focusing on that worm that is eating the maize, but asking myself, is this farmer going to make money based on the yield I project for this harvest?
Yes.
And will it transform his, will it return to his investment?
Excellent.
So I approach agribusiness from a investment angle, and that's really what we have been doing. And how we got here is that I sat on a desk when I was employed.
Yes.
In my, what I can say, the last structured employment, and I could see that the Dutch embassy was very instrumental in collaborating Africa, or generally every country where SNV was, to be able to borrow a lot from what the Dutch were doing in dairy. And you could see, especially people who were able to travel, would visit the Netherlands and come back and write an email to the embassy and saying, I have just come from your country and I'd like to see how can you support me stock 100 cows?
Yes.
Or to develop a structure for this number of animals. But government had only established knowledge around smallholding.
Okay.
So it was very difficult to go to your local, agricultural office and ask, help me with a structure for 100 animals. The agriculture officer will tell you, I know for 2 and 3 animals, because basically the design was for a smallholder. So I saw a lot of emails dying on my desk of people who would potentially do big business, not getting help, and had a very understanding team of my supervisors. And I said, look, I think these people out there are not having someone supporting them on how they can begin large-scale investments in livestock business. And that was the thought of, how about leaving the job and starting an outfit where these people can come and be supported and they can pay a fee for it. So that's how we have been.
David, what you say is very interesting, because episode 23, we had Bernard Wagitu. And Bernard Wagitu runs Amagodupa Stud.
Yes, you
and
mentioned that.
he is in the small ruminant side,
Yes, small
and
ruminants.
focused on the Dupa.
Yes.
But what you're saying mirrors almost like for like exactly what he said, because he says that our policy is designed for the smallholder.
Yes.
And what he has learned on his Dupa journey is that scale is what will make the transformation. Scale
Exactly.
is the difference.
Exactly.
So where is the disconnect?
Yes,
Why
and-
do we
and-
find ourselves at a national level dealing with smallholder without? I would understand if you're saying we're dealing with smallholder and there's another office you could go to talk about scale.
Yes.
But what you're saying is you saw a gap.
There was a gap.
There was smallholder only, and there's nothing here to talk about
Exactly.
scale.
And
so
this is
what's
what
the disconnect?
This is a guy we can call the orphaned level of investor. Orphaned in the sense that the smallholder is focused on by government, right from their designs, right from their plans, their budgets. 75% of government support.
Yes.
75% of NGO focus in agriculture goes to smallholders because they are perceived to be the farmer who is in need. So you don't hear somebody designing a project to support somebody who is currently a CEO and wanting to do an investment on the side to have 100 animals in their village and processing a bit of yogurt and doing some good business in their area, employing 100 people. So that person is perceived to be able to support themselves.
Yes.
And therefore the focus of government was designed around the smallholder.
Okay.
If you remember that the understanding of government, right, from the days of the 80s, 90s, when we were being born, some of us, and growing up, is that they wanted everybody, every family to be farming and feeding themselves.
Yes.
Which was good that time because really people are just getting land, learning about good practices, soil erosion control, all those nice things that a family can do for themselves so that they can feed themselves. But I think that we didn't realize when that shift came.
Yes.
Because now, coming to the early 2000s, when we have all these young children who grew up in that context now coming to the cities and beginning to work, we have huge swelling populations in the city. And those are the people we need to feed.
Yes.
So it is no longer about that small family in Kwale or in Nyeri feeding themselves. It is now feeding the cities.
Yes.
Where people are going.
The urban centers.
And now, even if we have not achieved the objective of a family feeding themselves, how do we now feed the people who are in the cities? Look at the peri-urban parts of Nairobi. You can't believe, go to the evening and find how many young people are walking around there. They are attending a college around there. They live in that small town. Those people must be fed. And every evening they are coming with a few shillings, but they are looking for eggs. They are queuing on the milk bars to buy milk. Some of them who can afford are buying some small pieces of meat. I call them that because it could be less than a quarter. But they are buying animal products. So that person, that meat was not brought there by a smallholder family somewhere in a rural village who produced meat, milk, and eggs for themselves. It is brought there by somebody who produced excess. Somebody who produced 100 units of milk, consumed one, and took to the city 99. Those are the guys now who really we should be focusing on. And I'm not saying that we forget smallholder. It is still important because our economy is still at takeoff. That we ensure that every family can feed themselves. But we have to have a strategy around aggregation to ensure that all these produce brought together. Farmer A has about 5 liters left after their children took their milk. Farmer B has a few eggs left after they took at the family. The Farmer C has a few goats that they can sell after they have eaten one at home somewhere in Northeastern. So all these can be aggregated to be brought to the market. But that's a more expensive process. But if a commercial farmer who has 200 animals and whose idea is not to consume any of this milk, is to bring it to the city, that is a farmer who we should focus on because that is a farmer who can feed the city. But the design of agricultural support and the planning at government level, the training of graduates and how they are supposed to go to the world of work and support agriculture, they were trained for the smallholder farmer. So this guy is actually orphaned. And that is a guy who keeps us going because he knocks at Perfometer and says, hi guys, I want to start a dairy farm of 100 animals. This is the support I want. I want you to train for me a manager. I want you to construct a structure for me, metallic, good design, high cow comfort. I want you to tell me where I can buy a milking machine or a milking parlor. I also want you to give me a data system. how I can be able to see my data when I'm in my office, because I'm spending my time in an office, but I want to see how my farm is running on a digital interaction. I also want you to show me how to grow fodder so I can be able to do a good job. So you can see this guy is about to put a lot of money
Yes.
in this farm.
Yes.
He is about to employ a graduate. He can afford a graduate because he wants a good job. He wants a CEO lookalike who can be his eyes when he's absent.
Yes.
So this person puts a lot of money. But can I surprise you? There's hardly any, not just government, sometimes we put our hands on government a lot. There's hardly any systems that have singled out this investor as a person who needs support. And those are the guys who are dropping off very quickly. They shut their farms quickly because they can see it either shuts on them,
Yes.
or they just shut it because some of them are able to see this thing is not going anywhere. But while he is shutting, nobody is noticing. First of all, because there are not many.
Yes.
There are few, and there is no deliberate effort to make them more. So what do we begin to see? We begin to see external investors. A guy comes from UAE and sets up a serious enterprise in Kenya because he's coming from a country where he can be supported if he can be able to give a pitch about what he's doing in Kenya, a country with a growing market for meat, for eggs, for milk, and for poultry meat. So it's basically just the best place that a financing institution would be able to support you. But here, we haven't seen that opportunity to support this guy because we think he has a salary and he can run his enterprise on his good payslip. But by the time these guys are retiring, I can tell you, which is really shocking. By the time they're retiring, maybe they started having this interest at 50. They have 10 years to go. They are still struggling with that business. And most likely after retiring, because the money they used to use for the banking support is over, that enterprise goes down. And we don't realize that that has gone. And we have lost a big opportunity to employ graduates. And we have a huge unemployment problem. You know that.
Yes.
Those are the guys who can employ. The issue of quality. You have heard about quality issues on meat, quality issues on milk. Very sensitive discussions going on in mainstream media. But do you know it is much easier to work on quality if you're dealing with large-scale investments in milk than smallholders?
True.
Smallholders don't spoil milk. But the aggregation and the amount of logistic, very sophisticated routes to get to the market,
moving parts
things can get wrong.
Yeah.
And we end up saying, hey, milk, are we matching our quality with Zimbabwe? But who dominates the production in Zimbabwe? It is big farmers.
Yes.
And therefore, working on quality, reducing those bacteria levels in their milk is very easy because you're dealing with farms that are doing large scale. The Dutch, one farmer delivering 1,500 liters every day, compared to a farmer somewhere in Nyeri who is delivering 10 liters. How many farmers do you need to get to the one Dutch farmer? Yes. So when they're working on quality, we can't compare their cheese and our cheese.
Yes.
Because it had to go a lot of routes, a lot of issues there before it gets. So in as much as we try our best to ensure that we get the best quality to the market, and I think Dairy Board and other people are working hard to ensure we get good quality. But our systems already, we start at a negative.
Okay.
Because we have to aggregate hundreds and thousands of farmers. So this big farmer is the future.
Yes.
But I think in the next, we could also look at then where are the struggles for this farmer and how are they getting into business with or without support?
Yeah. So let's talk about your 13-year journey, because you clearly have had some experiences with this farmer that we have now defined.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Let's, for just purpose of this podcast, call him the telephone farmer.
Yes.
You know, he has capital.
Yeah.
You know, he has the resources.
He's
He has the
bankable.
land. He's
Yeah.
bankable.
Yes.
And he can understand an investment in intellect.
Yes.
You know, so
Yes.
the service of what he doesn't know, he's willing to buy.
Yes.
So these have been your bread and butter.
Correct.
You know, because when I look at the Perfometer website,
Yes.
I see you have an architect.
Yes.
There are not many people who would expect to find an architect in a dairy or dairy beef and fodder, you know, advisory firm.
Yes.
A website.
Yes.
You know, but you have an architect
Yes.
because you assist your clients with design of their barns. You're a 360 organization.
Yes. All under one roof.
So what have you learned and what have you seen? You clearly have seen and where are the opportunities and maybe a bit of the success stories,
Okay.
so that we can contextualize, because you, like you rightly say, this is the future.
We have two kinds of walk-ins. Of course, we are putting our name out there in the market. So right now, I could see we are also getting some good footprint outside of Kenya because of the videos and so on. And I'm happy about that. But Kenya is remarkably growing on commercial farming interest.
Yes.
And we have two kinds of farmers. By the way, interestingly, we also have an age trend. We have very few cases of commercial farmers coming to us in their 30s. They may come and pay something we call a master plan or pre-master plan, like testing the waters. They pay fully and then they disappear. Others will go up to a level of master plan. They see the cost of the works and then they say, hey, this cost more like the cost of building my own house. So let me wait. But the people who come to us at late 40s to about mid 60s, those are the guys that are driving our business. They are paying our bills because they come there knowing I want to do this investment. Probably they have also achieved a few other, they have also made other investments. So they're ready for this one. Because it's not work, it's not easy for a guy who is in their 30s to decide to do a 10 million investment. Most likely the young family is still looking for, when shall we build a house? Are we comfortable with our school fees? So these other guys in that age are the ones who really come and give us business. But when they come, we have two types. One person will come when they have done nothing. They want you to tell them from the start, is it right for me to do this? From day one. By then, those are the best clients because we have a blank check. We can tell them this is a no-go or this is a go business. And out of about 10 on the side of dairy, because beef are just coming up, out of about 10, we have we probably shoot down about 6. If you want to know that our terrain for commercial farming is not easy, we shoot down about 6.
By shoot down, you mean that you tell this guy, don't go this
Don't
route.
put your money here.
Don't put your money here, you lose everything.
Don't put your money. And those people will get discouraged.
Yeah.
Actually, some insist. I have a few who just say, okay, they have told me that, but I'm going for it. They'll come later, say, I'm struggling. Can you help me here and there? And it's difficult because if someone set a farm in a place where the market is a bit far, and they're on what we call high input, high output model. You are milking your cows in the machine, so there's power usage. You have a few vehicles to transport your milk to the point where you want it sold. You have a graduate manager who is earning more than 60,000 shillings per month. You are feeding cows properly, and you have pedigrees on the farm. That is high input. The smallholder farmer, the typical case of my mother, is not buying a pedigree. They have a Frisian in the looks, but not in the live weight. This Frisian is about 350 kgs. When the real Frisians out here with the commercial farmer are past 600 kgs adult weight. They don't feed this animal properly, the smallholder. They feed what they can get. Right now it's raining. Nobody can pick your business card if you're selling fodder. Nobody remembers that there was a drought in 2021, 2022. They will feed weeds that are growing on the farms naturally. They'll give some napier and they tell the cow, bye, I'm going today for a wedding. Let's meet in the evening. And if you feel like you're hungry, be sure I'll be back. That's how they feed the animal, more like pets. Milk comes out because maybe you can get some 10 liters or so. But there's a cow that genetically can be able to give 3 times that. But the commercial farmer, because they have got a loan, which is being serviced by their pay slip, or it was appraised based on their earning mechanisms, they cannot play those games of giving the cow some green material with low dry matter. They go for a full ration. So they come to the office and say, you have a nutritionist in the house. You have an architect. Come and make my cow comfortable. Tell me how it should look like. I want a high roof. I want a steel barn. I want mat for comfort. Also bring a ration, a person who can make a ration. Balance it for me. Are they eating the right thing? Measure the live weight. You can see us in a farm there in aprons. We are measuring cows' live weight so that we know how much is the dry matter intake for this animal and what is balanced feed for this farm. What can they afford? What can they be able to grow? What do they need to buy? We do the math and say, this farm can work. You buy component A, you plant component B and C, then you have a full ration, and you sell your milk at this price, you're good. And if you're not good, then we say, hey, this may not work. Because the cow must feed right. These guys don't play games. So eventually they discover, yes, the cows are looking good, but I'm not in the money. So those are the two people who we receive. The person who is already started, and they're coming to get their problem sorted. They think it's going down, and they think an advisory intervention could help. Or somebody who is now starting, where we have a chance to say go or don't go. But then we have, in terms of the typology of the walk-in, there is this guy who we like. It's good to say that.
Yeah.
The professionals are very good. Professionals, even if they're politicians, but they're professionals. You know, we also have politicians who began their life as professionals.
Yes.
Then they went into politics because
Yes.
we are also supporting quite a bit of people in
Yes.
government. Those people, they wait for your word. And if you say it is not working, they pay your money and they tell you, get someone else who can tell me about horticulture or small ruminants like the Amagodopas. Then I see whether I can go for it. But we have told them for this particular one that you came for, it's not going to work. And we can't tell you to do so that we have work to do a cow barn design or to buy for you heifers. We are also here, we are doing ethical business. I always warn people, don't ask a vet when you're starting a farm, because vets are trained to keep animals healthy.
Yes.
And to keep them reproducing. They don't have a very strong angle of economics. So if you used a vet to start a farm, that farm will have to start as per your request. There's a very low likelihood that he will tell you not to do it.
Yes.
Because they're not doing an economic analysis. They are checking whether the ecological zone is suitable for your animals.
Yes.
They'll give you very good advice on which animal can survive here. You give you a good indication of what diseases you need to be care about and how to reproduce. But then if you come back to them and say, but I'm not making money, that's not the question for a vet. You need to get somebody who has a business angle to your business and check whether it works. So I see a number of people may have started with a vet because as a person they know. And vets are very many around us. Then they start the farm. Then later on it gets into problems. I was about the professions. The guys who are in professions are very good because they obey our word. But there's also another crop that we struggle with.
Yes.
The guys who have been doing very successful business on their own, self-made, wealthy people. They find it very difficult to take advice.
Okay.
And that's one of the people who I see closing business. Of course, they have lost money. But you may understand that they have come from a background where they have on their own, they have grown by their own without consultants.
Yeah.
When they now decide to come to agriculture, they employ the same method.
Yes.
So they may not really be very smooth to advise, like whatever you tell me, I will do. You say, I mean, I have been doing business for the last 40 years.
And
Why is someone telling me
it?
to not to do it? But those guys, then they will come back when things are tough and they are shy to close down because they fit a bit. You know, men,
Yes, the ego kicks in, yeah.
That your clothes get down, it feels very bad. So then we are very gracious. We also go there to check, is there any chance for survival? And we can say, why don't you do this? Start a shop in Kayole or somewhere, take your milk there. If it makes economic sense, this business will survive. Or just shift to beef. Dairy is complicated for you. So those are the kind of people that we deal with. But somehow they are keeping us going, and we also get a lot of knowledge by serving them.
It's very interesting, the analogy used of the vet, because in my day job, so to speak, I'm a hospitality person. And we give the same advice where we say, listen, don't go to an architect to ask him whether you should build a hotel.
Perfect.
Because the architect will build the hotel.
Exactly.
If you want it, his job, his job is to build. Yeah. But if the hotel will be commercially viable, that's another conversation.
That's not a question for the architect.
And that conversation is not. So I meet a lot of investors in hotels who they come to have a chat when the hotel is built. And you're like, maybe we should have talked
after the fact,
before, But interesting. So maybe without mentioning any specific names, maybe to contextualize for the viewer, maybe walk us through in your 13 years a journey of one success story. Someone who, these people that you have described, someone who came to you and is now running a thriving and high-performing dairy outlet.
We have, we have actually many examples of that. We have many examples of such farmers, and some of them not necessarily because we give advice. Some of them just were in place at the right time.
Yes.
For example, any commercial farmers in the peri-urban areas, FAO has predicted that the enterprises that are going to grow in agriculture are the enterprises that are not too far from the urban populations. So
what does not too far mean? Just to contextualize, from a distance.
What you typically call peri-urban would be about 50 to 60 kilometers from a big city.
Yes, okay.
Because then you can be able to get your product consumed at a high price. When I say high price in dairy, forget about the prices paid in Mandera, in those milk deficient areas, or Dubai.
Yes.
In Kenya, if someone pays you at farm gate 60 shillings a litre or 70 shillings a litre, what they are selling now in the parts of Ruai, Kangudo Road,
Yes.
you can be able to treat your cow right and be in business. If someone pays you 40 shillings for a long time, they are driving you out of business.
Okay.
So some of those farmers who are not too far from the city and they are doing the right things, we have seen farmers growing. And dairy is viable, actually. The farmers we prevent from starting business is a farmer who is likely to get that 40 bob of, like now there's a glut. You may not have noticed, but we have had 5 successful rainfall seasons. And now we are moving from a rainy season. If you looked at today morning,
Yes.
we are getting to the July weather.
Yes.
Still wet.
Yes.
People have forgotten about problems of fodder. So now milk has been, cows are producing milk. Even a cow that is not fed well, they are healthy. They got something to eat, and they are not facing a lot of starvation.
Yes.
So there's a lot of milk. There's a glut. So there's a farmer right now who is being paid 40 shillings, and they can get an SMS at midnight to say from tomorrow morning we are paying 37. And there's nothing you can do about it because the cow will have to produce milk and you have to take it somewhere. You can't pour it.
Yes.
So we have farmers who have succeeded, and there are many cases of such farmers. And those farmers, it is because, first of all, they have the right cow. They have the right comfort level. They have the right management. And most importantly, because this is where the economic rubber meets the road point, they also have a good market. We have a case of a farmer who mirrors exactly that kind of a best practice culture, but who is in a place where the market is paying them 40 bob. And if they make an effort to bring their milk to the city, it will cost them another 40 shillings for that milk to get to the city. So whatever they do, it won't make sense.
They're in trouble.
So you don't fault this farmer on account of best practice, that they're not doing the right thing.
Yes.
When you go to do something we call the dairy farmer benchmark, there's something we call a DFB. It's the most popular product in Perfometer. It's called a DFB, Dairy Farm Benchmark, where we go and spend a whole day. In fact, this afternoon I'm going to present one.
Yes.
In an institutional farm on how basically it's a turnaround. It's a diagnosis of a dairy farm, what you should do, and how we get this to viable. Sometimes you also say this is not going anywhere through that diagnostic, more like a lab thing for in health.
Yes.
And when we go there, you find that the guy has done all the chapters are green, but then the economics is not good because of the issue of price. So the farmers who are doing fine are there, and I'm really looking forward that we could actually have such conversations with such farmers to see how they got to do it. But there's a huge factor of their market context, which is really an economic issue, as opposed to what they do on a day-to-day in their farms. There are also farmers who are still in that advantageous economic context, but they're not doing well, because we are not farming optimally, or there's a much less support at the sector in terms of, I don't know whether you're aware that Kenya is essentially a feed deficient country.
When we now come to fodder.
When you come now to even feed, we import. We import. Feed feed basically encompasses all of them.
Yes.
But we like to single out fodder.
Yes.
So that we don't subsume the entire issue of the forages.
So when you say Kenya is feed deficient.
So we suffer both ways.
Okay.
The feeds that you see, the maize germs, the grain itself, the cotton seed cakes, the soya, they're imported. From other countries.
From Uganda.
From Tanzania, from Zambia. We don't produce them here. So we are on borrowed time when it comes to that. We are trying to do local production, but it's still very small. Then also on fodder, all these fodder you see around, if we suffer a drought, if we suffer one failed rain season, like for example, if the short rain in September does not happen, anybody who sells fodder, and right now we have a subsidiary called Cowdish, which basically distributing fodder to the peri-urban farmers. We finish all our stocks in 3 feed centers is wiped out in 4 months. And in the 5th month, you're saying, Hakuna, don't call us. But nobody was talking to you when there was fodder. So you can see that the deficiency is not because we didn't grow it, is that we don't have the resources to pile or to stack enough amounts to cover us for about 2 years. So that's basically the situation for the country as well. There's too much green, everything is greenish. But the moment we suffer 3-4 months of drought, everything goes dry, and a farmer in Mandera is coming to look, a commercial farmer in Moyale is calling Nakuru to check whether there is hay. And that's how our entire system of livestock farming goes down. because then we have animals dying, we have body condition loss, we have no milk in the market. Even Kenya Dairy Board has to go to the cabinet and seek an approval for importation. Within we just two failed rainfall seasons, we are done, because we don't have enduring systems of feed and fodder, and we don't have a way of substituting our import culture to have local production instead. So we are too exposed, but we are a bit blinded by the good weather that we see. I have started with a joke that if today you say I sell fodder, nobody picks your business card.
Yes.
So some of those farmers, they are not going down because they didn't do the right thing. It's because they are in peri-urban. They have no farm to produce fodder. They rely on fodder they can buy.
Yeah.
But then the sector has run out of fodder, and therefore either they have to sell their animals or they just have to stop that business. So who failed them? It is not a mistake to start a farm in Kamulu or in Ruai. That farm can feed the city.
Yes.
But they needed a backstopping of fodder availability all year round by somebody who produces fodder. That person who produces needed funding to be able to produce a lot or long enough to ensure that these peri-urban farmers, which are growing in numbers, can be supported through the time when there is no rain. So now imagine a situation whereby these farmers are becoming more and more. They are more viable because of the market advantage. But on the back side, there is no fodder reserves in the country. And by the way, there is no county that has done a fodder storage. If today there's some farmer who has a grown hay, and this is the weather we see this morning, that hay is not going to be cut. The grass will have to grow again another season to hope there will be a sunshine to have it cut. We call that post-harvest loss. You can't believe how much hay is going to be lost because the rain didn't allow us to harvest. We've come from a rainy to a wet season. Narok, Nakuru is full of grass on the farm waiting to be cut. It won't be cut. Nobody talks about it, that we probably needed an intervention to ensure that this grass is not lost. But 2 years down the line here, we might have loss of 2 seasons of rain, and all this grass that we lost would now be needed, but we won't be having it.
So what's the fix? You have clearly defined the problem, very clearly. So in that case, like using that example of the grass.
Yes.
Yeah. The rains are still here with us. Yeah. So there's grass in the field.
Yes.
So to avoid that post-harvest loss, what would we need to do, both at a national level and at a farming level, at a farmer level?
I like the fact that you begin also at a country level.
Yes.
Let me give you this analogy, and you might understand very well because you drive.
Yes.
Before 1960s, cars were very difficult to drive.
Yes.
If someone was driving a truck, they would probably develop muscles just because of just turning the steering.
Yes. Yes.
It used energy, time, and a lot of muscle work to get it to turn from a straight road to a turn. Over time, they began to introduce hydraulic, where now you have it easier, but it was also sophisticated. Now, late in the 90s, 98 thereabout, we had the power steering. Today, you can turn your car leisurely with a finger on a turn. I'm not saying you do that. It's not safe. But basically, it's so light, you can't even imagine that you're driving a truck, and it feels very light. So our agriculture support, especially in terms of feed, the issue of feed, is that we are more between the mechanical driving that was there before the 50s, where there's completely no intervention to make the steering lighter or smoother. We are now around the hydraulic, where we begin to talk about subsidies, but they are all directed to the smallholder farmers, not the commercial farmer.
Yes.
The guy who goes for fertilizer is not the big farmer. The guy who goes there's a lot of support really that is because of the numbers,
Yes.
Because it's a political decision and therefore numbers matter. So it's a bit of a difficult steering, but some countries have moved to the power steering. For us, we probably are in the early stages of hydraulic, where there's a bit of intervention, but still feels mechanical.
Yes.
So this issue of fodder is that nobody really has invested in the R&D around fodder, and there has not been any investment around risk of losses. There is no fund right now that you can talk about that is moving around looking at which grasses are we about to lose. Let us just cut and dry it. the Dutch would have that. If you had your grass that you're making silage and it is raining, there's a place you can go which is government subsidized, and you make it all into pellets. They dry it for you at a cost. Then you go and keep it. They don't let it to be lost because this is really the lifeline of the country. Here, a farmer is on their own. They planted 1,000 acres of hay, and now a season has passed. They were waiting that between the time the rain stopped and before July checks in, there'll be sunshine. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that. So they can't cut. And if they cut, it will rot. But that county does not realize that if we lose these 1,000 acres, 2 years down the line, the county will be looking for money from the treasury to buy grass for farmers because their cows are dying. And it will be like an off-take. Or the government will be buying animals that are almost dead to come and trying to miss their meat for relief. Some very difficult interventions that are going to cost billions. But you can actually spend that billion by ensuring that fodder is not lost. The issue of storage, grass that you mentioned, can you imagine how much storage would be required for 100 acres of hay? It will be the size of the primary school in your village.
Yes.
The storage.
Yes.
So a producer should not store. If they attempt to store, they can only store maybe a tenth of their harvest. So if they can't store, they just forget about it. Because they can't sell now, nobody's buying. So that logistics of getting it from the production zone to where it is consumed and building the stores around the cooperatives should be an intervention that is national level strategy. A cooperative may not be able to build a store that can host 1 million bales of hay, but they may consume that during a drought season. No bank will fund you to build a store because for them it's not a business. It's a store. It's not a profit center. A store. The banks are very clever. You are taking money to build a store to put, unless you are storing for people to pay you per bale for the period you store for them. Now that's already a profit center. But just to keep hay there until you need it, a bank will struggle with that idea, and then they fund you on something else. So most of these cooperatives don't have a store. Next week, I'm having a meeting with about 10 cooperatives, and we are now discussing about how do we ensure that we can do this game on our own. Because we see like we are abandoned. No bank will give us money to build a store. Can we now begin to generate a fund that can do what banks don't want to do and has to be done by us? Because grass is being lost in the producer's area. It should come to us because we shall need it anyway. So the intervention is actually to be able to build a lot of facilities to store the grass that we are losing. But also to be able to have products that allow producers of fodder to produce more and for longer. If they are not funded, they have cash flow problems and therefore they can't plant again. How do you expect somebody who is now on the 5th rainfall season to plant another crop of maize when the other one is still in the bunker and it was not bought because it was raining? Where will they get the money? Sometimes I hear private processors of milk asking that. We took so much milk, it's in the store as powder. Then we take again, it's in the store. We are not selling. So unless we get a funding to cover that so that we have cash flow, otherwise our cash flow is going to be the store. So we are going to ignore. We can't take the milk because we have taken enough and our cash flow is all tied in the store. That's the same case for fodder farmers. All their cash flow is in the bunker. Where will they get the money to plant and harvest and store another season? And there's no intervention. So that's why I said we are still on that hydraulic or mechanical steering. You are on your own.
Yes.
Instead of going to the power steering by putting serious and well-targeted interventions to ensure that we don't lose fodder. How do we lose fodder? 1,000 and many thousands acres of grass because it didn't shine. And 2 years ago, the PS announced that we lost 2.5 million animals to death because there was no grass. Cows were eating cartons. And anything they can find just to be alive, they still died anyway. But all they needed was grass. But we had all that grass. We had no mechanism to ensure that it is stored, waiting for a period that will surely come. Because drought is an externality. It's not really a crisis. We know it comes.
So, David, where's the disconnect? Because this seems to be a conversation that needs to take place between the national government, the county government, and cooperatives or commercial, and farmers. Let's not even break them down. Yeah. It's not a question of one or the other. It's a collective.
It's collaborative, actually.
It's a collaborative conversation.
Yes, exactly.
So where are we failing?
I think also at farm level, if today, Leonard, you're having a farm and you don't have a store, and you're pointing fingers at the government for not initiating mechanisms to have storage facilities around the fodder consumption areas, then there's a problem. More figures are pointing at you. You see a farmer he has a cow barn or a beef lot of, say, 500 animals, but there is no bunker for storage. So where will fodder be stored? They have exhausted the entire space with the area where cows will be feeding, but feeding on what? So we also need to mainstream the thinking that fodder comes before animals. When you come to Perfometer, we don't allow you to have animals before fodder. If you see any animal, and if you see any investor who has cows, who has landed cows before fodder, that person has not come from us. Because most people, they feel so demoralized that, are you telling me I can't start my cows tomorrow? I already had somebody who is selling them to me. I said, no, I'm sorry. This is not how it goes. We are going to plant fodder for one season, put in the bunker. Another fodder season, put in the bunker. Once we have the bunkers full, it is time to bring the cows. When we are filling the bunkers, the construction is ongoing. As long as we had a go verdict on the master plan, then we can bring the cow. Cows come to a place where feed is already stored. You don't bring a cow, then you start buying feed from the market. You are not sure that you get that fodder tomorrow. It will run out because we actually go through serious drought. So if any farmer, because you asked at enterprise level and at government level, national level, I'm now answering the question of enterprise level.
Yes.
Anybody who has a livestock enterprise, whether it is small ruminants or large ruminants, when they are constructing the barn, part of our design is that we put a store. And we have a scientific way of arriving at how much store you need. We make a ration and say, your ration will consist of maize silage, it will have hay, it will have napier grass, it will have compound feeds. And therefore, if we want to have feeds for a year, I can be able to calculate, you have 100 animals and each of them is taking 7 kgs of silage. Therefore, you need bunkers this much. Then the architect comes in. She gets those dimensions from us, from the technical side. And she now gives you bunkers enough to ensure that you can store your feed for a year.
Yes.
But most people will be able to put money on the barn because that's where the cows live, but might be very reluctant to build the bunker. To make sure they do that, we start with fodder production and say, now we need barns for us to store this fodder. So eventually, they actually end up with bunkers before the dairy. And then we give them an assurance. In the event that you lose the psyche or the momentum of having this dairy farm, keep this fodder in the bunkers, we can take it later. We can buy it from you because you can't go wrong with fodder. Drought will come and you have to sell it. So you see, it's actually safer than to have cows and then drought comes and you have no reserve. It's actually safer to have fodder than without cows.
Yes.
Most of them will then say, let's now move on. And they have a very good start. If you want to have a bad start and become a motivational speaker on how bad dairy is, bring the animals first.
Yes.
Cows are beasts. They are taking in a huge biomass of more than 80 kgs a day in biomass value, not in dry matter. And they are taking about 100 liters of water every cow. Those are like 5 mtungis, the one that people in the village used to fetch water from a river. 5 of them, one animal. And that is just one day. So imagine how much you need. And then you bring them as you wait to grow fodder. By the time you're halfway, you are on negative cash flow and you don't want to hear anybody mentioning cows. People have developed those kind of attitudes towards animals because they started at the wrong step. That's what we face. It's not because it is bad. Because you know the way you start a dance with the wrong step.
Yes.
And the other people are still dancing and you don't know how to catch up. It is wrong to bring animals before fodder. We always start with fodder. And I think everybody who wants to set up an enterprise in livestock, the storage must feature first. And the investment in bunkers and hay stores should come first. So that when you're talking about the post-harvest laws, we know that all the stores for the farmer level are full. What we are now left with is what the country should now care about. That after every farmer has stored up to their capacity, how much is still going to be lost? Then we can begin to think about a county level, the storages. Why is a county like some of the counties that rely on livestock are Kajiado, Narok? If you walk along the way, you should be seeing stores. In the streets or on the highways of Punjab in India, you'll find stores. These are stores for keeping animal feed. So that when the bad day comes, they have feed that the county can say, we are giving you a subsidy. You can pick the feed from our store at cost. Because we stored it for you already on what would otherwise want to post-harvest lost.
Yes.
But if farmers are not having their own stores in the first place, then we are failing on both sides. It is a serious intervention both at national level but also at farm enterprise level.
But I'm basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing from you is that the opportunity is massive if well thought out. You know,
Yes.
this whole ecosystem that you're talking about, yeah, of both dairy production and beef, yeah, if well thought out strategically, like you say, not
Yeah.
just throwing money at it,
Yes.
but built on a plan that
Yes.
it is actually, as a nation, very, very fixable.
It's actually, we have a huge opportunity. Can I surprise you? For the last about 10 years, dairy production has been growing at about 2 to 3%, sometimes 1 to 2%, the growth. But consumption has been growing between 8 and 9%.
What?
If you can think from an economics level,
Yes.
you can see how the graphs are going. The graph of consumption versus the graph of production, they are parting ways. And when they produce that gap, you know they're coming from the same point.
Yes.
Through time t, if you cannot see one graph going up, the other one
The other
being a
one,
bit gentle,
yes.
that gap is potentially going to be filled by imports. Look at which country is importing.
Yes.
Look at which country is talking about importing a food where we are the biggest consumer. At some point, we were the biggest consumer of milk in the world among developing countries. Remove the countries that are affluent, developed nations, and focus on the countries that are developing in Africa, Latin America, Asia, Southern Europe. Put them aside.
Yes.
We were among the highest consuming in milk, hitting about 110 liters a year per person. Right now, the data is not very consistent, but it probably could be hitting more than that because of the urban population.
Yes.
Urban generally consume more per
Yes.
day than
Yes.
the rural people.
Yes.
And we talked about the urbanization. So we have more people in the urban side. So we are probably hitting the 120s, perhaps highs of past 120 liters. Uganda, our neighbor, is doing about half of that per year. Ethiopia, you don't talk about it. They're all black coffee, probably about 30 liters per year, per person. Rwanda, the same. Tanzania, the same, 40. So our per capita consumption of milk is very high and is not reducing. It's actually increasing because we are now going to the solid milk.
We're
Our
going to the
kids may not take
cheeses,
tea.
yogurts, yeah.
Your son, who is probably adolescent, cannot ask for tea here, the tea that we know of. But we'll be doing pizza, which has cheese. We'll be doing yogurt. And they might be more familiar with processed milk products than ourselves. When people begin to take solid milk products, our consumption goes much higher because a kilo of cheese is produced by 10 liters of fluid milk. So a guy who takes a cheese bar has taken several liters of milk when you are taking a pint in tea. So our consumption is going high. On meat, there were reports saying that we are hardly doing even a third of what the potential demand is for meat.
Yes.
And now we have a new problem. We have so much export of live animals going to UAE.
Yes.
So when we didn't have enough meat, we are now letting our animals go. And the gestation period of an animal or a cow to give birth to a young one is still 9 months. We can't do anything about that. We have to wait for that to happen. So we have challenges with the deficiency in production of eggs, of poultry meat, of beef, and of milk. Those are all critical products that determine how our population grows. The moment it becomes expensive, if it's $100 more for a kilo of meat, maybe for me I can afford it. But let me tell you, the number of people who will quit eating meat or eating eggs when you increase the price are so many. I work in 6 countries right now.
Yes.
Nigeria, the cost of their feed went by 4 times. And there was like half the population could not even access eggs. They could not afford them. What happens when kids can't access proteins? They become stunted.
Stunted growth, yeah.
Stunted growth. You begin to see kids who cannot grow. And that's our future workforce. Kids who cannot have their mental faculties developing because they lacked proteins. Why? Because we couldn't produce locally and we had to export because the demand for export cannot be ignored. And we end up in a very strange place where we don't know how we ended up here. Kids who are not growing. Half the population of kids in the areas that are poor not accessing eggs, milk, meat, and forget meat. But if they can't access eggs and milk, which are really affordable in the rural areas, we have a major problem. And then you discover that what we could have done is actually investing. You say that there's a business opportunity. It's a huge opportunity. When I talk about increasing demand for all these products, it means that anybody who is doing poultry, anybody who is doing small stock, ruminant, beef or dairy are supposed to be in business. But it also means that if there are all these people doing livestock farming, they also need a lot of fodder reserves. But if there's no investment at upstream, which is basically feeding, these enterprises won't survive. They will shut down. Some of them may not realize because it takes a bit of process thinking to understand why am I shutting down. You are shutting down because your cost were at 50 and your price of selling was 51 and you couldn't manage your overhead with that margin. But somebody would have thought at macro level that for this enterprise to thrive, for us to have milk, meat, poultry, beef, we have to have serious investments in fodder. Fodder cannot be funded by a commercial bank. It is a lucrative business, but nobody sells during rainfall season. So it's a seasonality issue. And banks don't like those things, that you're telling them that I can sell millions, but please allow me not to sell for the next 2 years because there's a lot of rain. No bank will fund you if you have such inconsistencies. So it means that the kind of funding that needs to activate feed production must be a different way of funding. Patient capital, blended in financing, some subsidized funding from government, to target the upstream to have massive feed production so that these enterprises can survive. If you don't do that, that investment, which would have been done upstream to produce feed, will be used for importing food, the animal products. And do you think government will afford to import those eggs to feed our children?
Yeah.
Don't you think government has priorities in health?
True.
They are struggling with the school funding. And you think government will have to import milk to feed that poor child? Those kids will be stunted as we watch.
Wow. So as we draw to the end, I know you're working on something around fodder.
Yes.
And a fodder investment conference. Maybe we can discuss that a bit, because I think you've done a brilliant job in contextualizing both the opportunity and the need on a national level now and going into the future. So maybe you can walk us through what you're doing about it as Perfometers fix.
Yeah, we have, well, of course, this is really a sector level intervention. So yes. I'm working into this as a consultant.
Yes.
Leading a process of organizing, coordinating the sector to rethink investments in feed and fodder. We have sidelined the issue of compound feeds because there is an organization that deals with that. The Association of Kenya Feed Manufacturers.
Okay.
So they can deal with the compound feeds and all the issues around the grain-based feeds.
Yes.
And the legume-based feeds.
Yes.
We now focus on the forages, which is really the leafy part of feed, animal feed, and which is why animals die.
Yes.
When animals were dying in Kenya, they didn't die because they lacked dairy milk. An ruminant won't survive on compound feeds. They have to chew fiber. So it is the side of fodder that you're talking about. So as it is now, there is no bank in Kenya that you can go to and say, do you have a fodder product that can fund me and I pay you when fodder is ready? Our banks will probably have very standard products that require you to pay money every month. So if you got money and planted your hay and you have to harvest it after 4 months, and then it rains and you can't harvest, the bank does not like a person like that. They would rather give money to somebody who is so sure they can be able to pay. And if they have to pay every month, but if they have to give you that money, they will tell you our cost of capital, the cost of money we give you because we are giving you depositors funds, is this level. So we can't give you patient capital. The bank is not the source of that kind of funding. So what we are doing in the Kenya's first fodder contracting and investment action, KFCA 1, which is going to be the first ever investment event for fodder. We are showcasing two things. First is contracting. Contracting is not very mainstreamed in Kenya, and really in countries that I'm now working on. Contracting is not a very familiar word between farms. Somebody will tell you, bring me this amount of feed, and on gentleman agreement, you deliver, they pay. But if you tell them sign here, they don't understand. Are you not trusting me? Contracting is not really something that we have as an African culture, that we have really documentation of stuff is not something that we have mainstreamed. So we want to show that contracting would put us in a better place as a fodder economy in the face of banks and investors. Because every investor will ask you, you want me to put money in your enterprise, which is a fodder production enterprise. Who buys from you? So show me the contract or the commitment. If you don't have that, investors are running away and they would rather put their money in hotels and manufacturing and other areas. Because you're not really to show, you are saying that you have all this production, but you can't show me a paper evidence of somebody who has committed that they will be buying from you this tonnage every so often. So that culture is not there. We need to showcase that contracting works. And we begin on that event to show who is contracting who needs how much of feed, and is putting out a pitch out there on somebody who can be able to supply them based on a contract. Number two, we also need to demonstrate to people this is how enterprises in feed and fodder work. Fodder, basically, that's how they work. This is how they produce money. So if you can put money in a fodder, would you be ready to have this kind of return within this time? Is it interesting for you? Some people are saying that just educate me on how it works. So we are also putting out information on the typology of fodder investments, fodder enterprises. You can produce hay, this will be the buyer. You can produce corn, you can do sorghum. All these have market. And this is how the market looks like. This is how the returns look like. You may not get money in a period of rain, but when the rain is over, we can sell and you can get your money back. This is the kind of mechanization we require. So we give all that information and we have investors sitting and say, I think I like that, I'm going to put money. Then we can begin to report that we have this amount of commitments and deals that have been created by matching the need for fodder and basically the demand side of fodder and the supply side of fodder. And the supply now has more money because a few investors have decided to put their money on fodder production. Then also to showcase that contracting can work. You see, cooperatives are very successful in Kenya. People come here to we actually do international missions.
Yes.
Right now I'm organizing Ethiopia, I think 2 weeks from now. I'm organizing Nigeria in August. Coming to see cooperatives, how they work in Kenya. But go and ask the cooperatives, where there is any cooperative that has a contract with a fodder producer who will supply their farmers fodder when drought comes. There's hardly any. And that's the discussion we're going to have next week in Naivasha. The reason is they would be thinking that farmers will find a way to bring their milk to the market. But 2 years ago, 22 out of 69 registered milk processors closed shop. Not because they didn't do business right, not because the CEO was incompetent, but because no milk came to the factory. And why did no milk come to the factory? Cows didn't produce milk because cows had no feed. So if we trace back our problem, the entire investment, which now people are using to import food or to try and do offtake for beef and help farmers here and there when there are problems, that money then should go to feed production.
Wow, David. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you've heard it for yourself. David, for me, is my go-to person to discuss anything to do with livestock, feed, farming. And I think he speaks to what I really like about the direction we're taking as a country, where we have this talent and this expertise, and we're using it. Yeah. So check out Perfometer. I think I'll give him a chance to tell you where you can find him and his organization, because I can vouch for them very strongly. They do phenomenal work in the areas and I think he has spoken to the expertise. It could have been a much longer conversation, and maybe we'll have him back to discuss this. So David, maybe I give you an opportunity.
Thank you very much for having me today. And we are in business. We are out here and we want to support investors to invest and do it right. I know there are some investors we have said, don't do it, it's not working. We do it because we have done analysis and we know it's not good for you. But where it works, we are very happy to support. And we do all-around support right from the beginning to the end, because we want people to be able to see money in agriculture. By the way, recently we actually began to talk to schools where to allow us to talk to their children, tell them there is future in agriculture, which is really a new program called the Fun on Farm, where we take kids out and tell them, look, this person makes money, pays their school fees, buys good clothes because they are doing dairy. Look, dairy makes money. And if they milk nicely, they get good food to the supermarket, which is clean for you to eat. So we are talking to the entire demographic that we are available as Performeter. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on, we also do quite a bit of content on LinkedIn and Facebook. We are based in Kilimani. You can do a walk-in. We talk to you. And we are here for business. And we want to ensure that investors in fodder, in livestock can succeed. And that way, we are able to make an impact and also make a life for ourselves. So welcome, Performeter. We're going to serve you.
Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. That was episode 25. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please do comment, give us your feedback, tell us who you'd like to see, what you'd like to hear. And let's continue showcasing Africans executing excellently. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.